welcome to this special installment of the Nufarm Virtual Learning Webinar Series. My name is Brandon Scott, Customer and Brand Marketing Manager for the Seed Treatment segment at Nufarm. And today we're going to be covering the second chapter in a three-part program on nematode management, understanding pests, risks, and new technology. Again, those three chapters are on soybeans, cotton, and corn. We've already covered soybeans. We're going to dive into corn. Now, as a reminder, we're breaking the chapters into two pieces. The first of which is the key takeaways on nematode management in each one of the crops. That's derived from presentations delivered by expert nematologists that delivered those presentations through a webinar that was an educational piece jointly developed by Nufarm and Seed World. Once we've covered the nematode management component, we will wrap up the chapter with a look at exciting new data from Trunemco and how it's delivering a leading level of protection and higher yields in each one of those three crops. All right, so let's take a look at nematode management in corn. And in order to do this, we're going to take a look at some common misconceptions that were derived from a presentation from Dr. Tamara Jackson Zims of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, who is a professor of plant pathology and also is responsible for statewide extension programming and research on established and emerging diseases of corn and sorghum. Now, Dr. Jackson Zims' presentation can be found in its entirety as part of that educational webinar jointly produced by Nufarm and Seed World that I referred to earlier. Now you can find Dr. Jackson Zims' presentation by Googling Nematode Management 2020 or by simply going to the YouTube webpage and entering Nematode Management 2020 into the search bar. Now there's a lot of great information in there, including info on soybeans and cotton, but for the sake of today, we're going to drill down into corn. All right, so as we take a look at Dr. Jackson Zims' presentation on nematode management, there's really three common misconceptions that surface when talking about nematodes in corn, and we need to identify these and deconstruct them in order to educate ourselves about the pest, specifically in corn, and then how do we develop a management plan to address the issue. So the first and most common misconception about nematodes is that the presence and the resulting damage and yield drag will be easily identifiable by severe above ground symptoms. So when we start to talk about nematodes in corn, the image that people often get in their minds is walking out into a field and having this large portion, this large area of either completely barren ground, no plants, or with plants that are severely stunted, yellow, and just look very unhealthy. Now, as Dr. Jackson Zims points out, this can happen, but it's often more rare of an occurrence than not. And so because of this misconception, it sort of leads itself into the second most common misconception, and is that nematode damage and the resulting yield drag is rare, when in fact what we know is it's probably more common than what most people believe, because the above ground symptoms either are much less severe, there may be some yellowing, slight size difference, or just some variability in the field, or no above ground symptoms at all. And so this is oftentimes, if there is above ground symptoms, is attributed to something other than nematodes, either another pest or disease, or it could be some kind of weather related issue, a low lying spot in the field, too much moisture here or there. And so oftentimes, the nematode damage is misattributed to something else, which this all sort of feeds into one another. The other misconception is that as you're walking out there, the thought is that nematodes are mainly found in sandier soil. So if I'm having some issues with my corn plants and they're exhibiting some signs of stress, if it's not in sandier soils, it can't be nematodes. It has to be one of these other factors. But what we see is that there are many different species of nematodes that come in different sizes, have different morphology, and so they are present in various different soil types. So it's critical that we understand these things in order to address the pests. So the key takeaway, when we take all of these things into consideration, it's critically important to have your field tested for nematodes to really understand the species that are present and the level of pressure that is in your individual field in order to address the pest. That concludes the nematode management portion of the presentation. Again, the key takeaway is it's critical to understand the pest pressure on your individual fields. In order to do so, I encourage you to reach out to your local area agronomist, perhaps an extension specialist, or take a look online for resources on how to test and best practices for testing for nematodes in your fields. But with that, let's take a look at new and exciting data from Trunemco and how it's delivering a leading level of protection and higher yields in corn. Now, this is going to be an abbreviated portion due to our short time together today. For the full-length video and the broader scope of data and images, please refer back to the Nufarm Virtual Learning Webinar Series library page for the full-length video. Well, to kick things off with Trunemco performance data in corn, we're going to take a look at a compilation of data on head-to-head comparisons of Trunemco versus Pancho Votivo over a series of field trials. Now, we've got two waterfall charts here on this particular slide demonstrating corn yield versus corn root damage. For the full-length description and explanation of waterfall charts, I encourage you to go back to the full-length webinar to really get into the analysis and more detailed explanation of these. But for the sake of today's abbreviated conversation, I'm just going to talk about the key takeaways on these. So again, we're taking a look at Trunemco versus Pancho Votivo, head-to-head comparisons across field trials. And so I'm going to draw your attention to the left hand here. We're taking a look at corn yield. So on average, Trunemco outperforms Pancho Votivo by an average of 7 bushels to the acre with a win rate of nearly 62% of the time. And when we look at what underpins that, what is it that's driving or delivering that higher yield? It's the decrease in corn root damage. So again, as we look at a comparison of Trunemco treated plants versus Pancho Votivo treated plants, Trunemco treated plants on average had 12% less root damage nearly 62% of the time than Pancho Votivo treated plants. So the key takeaway here is that Trunemco is providing a leading level of protection that outperforms the competition, allowing corn plants to thrive, delivering those higher yields. And in this instance in corn, it's 7 bushel to the acre versus Pancho Votivo. All right, and I'd like to conclude our time together by answering a question that we've gotten quite a bit over the past 9 months, and that is there value in over-treating a Pancho Votivo treated seed with Trunemco? And the answer is yes. Now, to back things up, oftentimes, as many of you know, when you purchase your seed from your preferred corn seed supplier, it comes with a base nematode control product on it, oftentimes Pancho Votivo. And so the question has often arose, is there value in overtreating that seed with Trunemco? And that's what this chart here is demonstrating, is that there is in fact a great amount of value to be derived. So as we take a look here at, I'm going to hone in on the orange, gray, green bars here. The orange bar, again, representative of Trunemco, showing in this instance of the 3 trials on average, a little, we'll say about 2 bushel, 2.5 bushel advantage. But when we take a look at the treatment, that is Trunemco over-treating Pancho Votivo treated seed, we actually saw nearly 8 bushel advantage over the straight Pancho Votivo treatment. And so, folks, this is demonstrating that there is, in fact, tremendous value in a yield perspective for over-treating Pancho Votivo treated seed with Trunemco. And that concludes this special installment of the Nufarm Virtual Learning Webinar Series on corn nematode management. My name is Brandon Scott. Thank you everyone for your time, and have a great year.